Welcome, everyone, to another installment of Demo Days. I'm your host, Steve Taylor. If you couldn't tell, we are moved. We're not unpacked, but we're moved. And I no longer have boxes behind me, and I have a much better view. I'm now between two ferns. So today, today I'm joined by Paul Lupo from Bitdefender. Paul, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me back, Steve. It's a pleasure to
Yeah,
talk to you and your audience anytime I can.
absolutely, man. So
Hey,
what's
congratulations on the move
funny.
too.
Yeah, well, thank you. What's funny is you and I, oh gosh, it's probably been 5 or 6 years. We were talking and you shared some really great Bitdefender like tips and tricks. You gave
Yep.
me this fantastic document. Have you been like updating that document over the years, or has Bitdefender just completely revamped their platform and that you don't need a document anymore?
Loaded questions. Love them. So what we did 5 to 7 years ago was a very different looking platform. It's had a couple of facelifts since then. The premise is still the same, right? So the management console for one single agent, one single pane of glass for managing all your security controls. And back then we had a lot of core product built into the thing that we've expanded on to go all the way from I want to just make sure we're taking care of ransomware. I want to make sure we're taking care of devices, locking them down, things like that, all the way out to EDR, XDR, and then layer on top of that humans for the MDR. So there's been a lot of increased technology, and a lot of that is driven by two things. So our community, when they're working with their customers, they're saying, my customers need this. So our team takes that feedback and says, okay, well, let's see if we can do that. And then obviously regulations, compliance, cybersecurity insurance also plays into how we decide what's going to go into there. But the console itself is very much driven by the MSP community, right? It is multi-tenant, it's monthly build, it fits along with the way that they do business. So the documents, I've lost count of how many I've had in the past even year or two, but I do, because I train other people to use this, I do update documentation frequently. So I can share some stuff with you after this that if you want
Sure.
to have my latest and greatest, which is still, because of how quickly we're releasing stuff, maybe a revision behind, but as up to date as it can be.
That's awesome. So, explain something to me. So, you've got Bitdefender, and for
Yeah.
whatever reason, for whatever reason, you guys developed a platform called Gravity Zone. What? Why do you have all these different names?
So Bitdefender endpoints. Can you see that? Um,
Yeah.
all right. So Bitdefender endpoint security tools is what sits on the agent, right? So that is Bitdefender. All of the different modules that we talk about sit on that endpoint, sit on that agent. Gravity
Mhm.
Zone is because we're pulling all the controls into one management platform. So Gravity Zone is the management platform is branded Gravity Zone, Bitdefender Gravity Zone. Make sense?
Yes. Yes, it does.
It's a great question.
Okay.
I get it a lot, and it's funny because when we have new hires come on and they're working, they're oh, Gravity Zone, right? And then when we start talking to them about Bitdefender endpoint security tools, they go, "What's that?"
Hmm.
So we have to educate internally as well that, well, that's what actually sits on the agents, on the endpoints.
Hmm. So, you guys have, back in my day, I used to walk uphill
Sweet.
both ways to and from school and 6 feet of snow, something, something. Back in my day, we didn't have all these MDR, XDR. We barely had EDR. Back then it was antivirus.
It
Today,
was.
that is That is definitely not the case today. So when an MSP says, I'm going to sign up to become a Bitdefender partner and I'm going to resell their products to my customers,
Yeah,
like how does that work? Because you guys have a lot of products. You've got everything from MDR, XDR, and EDR to patch management to disk encryption. Um, so can you kind of fill me in on how all that?
absolutely. Um, can I pause my screen for my sharing for 1 second?
Yeah,
Okay, I'll come right back to that. So,
it's okay.
um, I while we're doing this, I'll just tell you, I've been in this industry as a vendor on the antivirus side since 2005. Anti-malware, so I've seen a lot of things come and go. I was a SIM vendor for a while, right? So when you wanted to start talking about um, where was where, in my opinion, when I see EDR now and I see those XDR sensors and I see that layered in with your managed detection response, I was selling hardware, monster hardware to do that for my customers back when I was on the SIM side with Nitro Security. Let's see. Um, a lot of that has been reduced down to just a handful of things now, right? So I'm gonna just share something uh, with you guys right here. I think we might have showed this on our last presentation together, but it's important to understand in the context of where we are, right? For to answer your question specifically, there are some core products that are built in, right? And those core products happen to replace probably two or three that you're using, right? For example, the risk analysis up the top, the risk analytics, that's a free vulnerability scanner, right? So we're able to not just look at what threats there are on the endpoint, but also we can identify device misconfigurations, vulnerable apps. You can turn on the user behavior monitoring as well. So humans that are putting additional risk in your environment, we can identify those things. When you get into the content control and the network attack defense, that's DNS type of protection, right? So there are category filtering. So if I want to block gambling, mature sites, or whatever, or if I want to block against DDoS, brute force, and password stealing attempts, those are built into the core product. Same agent, same management console for controlling it, as well as the firewall is built into the core product. So there's so many things that you can reduce your overall spend, your management consoles, and your need to gain more knowledge on different platforms when you go to Gravity Zone. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
All right. Now we'll go a little bit further. So there is the ATS, the EDR, and the XDR. Those are now building in actionable intelligence into our platform. So advanced threat security is going to look at fileless attacks. It's going to look at unknown zero-day threats. It's going to look at do a complete forensic analysis, right? So it's a sandbox analyzer as well. Those things create incidents that land in the endpoint detection and response, the EDR dashboard. In there, you have actionable intelligence. I can isolate machines. I can kill processes. I can whitelist. I can blocklist. I can remote into machines, all from the EDR dashboard. When you get to XDR, right now, this is me also doing the work. But now, because we have some integration with Office 365, for example, Azure Active Directory, I can force user credential resets. I can delete emails that are going rogue around the environment from the same Gravity Zone console, right? When you start talking about, wow, that's a lot of work, and I'm still the IT staff for my customer, I'm not going to be able to spend all my time just staring at a security dashboard all day. That's when we start talking about, okay, well, who can do that for you? That's the managed detection and response. The biggest difference between all of the insert letter here DRs is when you get to M, that is some other humans doing that on your behalf. But up till M, that's you doing it in your own environments for your customers, or if you're doing it, if you have it on your own network, same thing, right? So as soon as you get to that tipping point where, wow, this is taking me away from being able to provide other services to my customer, that's when you really need to start thinking about, maybe I should outsource that to a managed service provider a managed detection and response provider. And that's what we talk about when we start talking about what is built into Gravity Zone and what is core for the protection pieces, right? There are other things that we also offer. So if you're already rerouting your email through a platform to scan it and protect it from bad stuff with an MX record, we can do the same thing with our email security. And that's Office 365, Google Workspace. If you have Azure Active Directory communicating with on-premise Active Directory, we can still bring those mailboxes in as well. We also have patch management for Microsoft and third parties. Where you see sometimes this is not offered is if you're using an RMM, right? So your RMM would usually offer you the patch management, but that doesn't mean that it wouldn't offer you ours if you asked also, right? If you're purchasing through traditional distribution, all of these modules are available to you. The full disk encryption is going to manage the recovery keys inside of BitLocker and File Vault. So we pull that control into Gravity Zone as well. Security for virtualized environments, that's a unique beast. If you have and you host on-premise virtual data centers, could be VMware, could be Hyper-V, we don't care what it is. We have a secure hardened virtual appliance that runs Bitdefender on the inside that will offload the scanning. Virtual servers, virtual desktops, they'll never scan themselves. And when you do, and again, I've been in this industry since 2005. The first thing that people did when they had to check the checkbox, does your virtual environment have antivirus on it? You said yes. Then you started loosening up the controls because the performance was just, oh my goodness, it was horrible. What this does is it loads up as another virtual appliance inside the environment. And then it will send chunks of files back and forth over TCP to make sure that they're clean. Now, to deduplicate the scanning process, to make sure that hundreds of machines aren't scanning at the same time that same file, we keep a local and a central cache that says this file has already been scanned. So there's no duplicate scanning when you open the same file that's already been scanned on another machine. It gives a ton of resources back to your virtual environments. You might be thinking, wow, that's gonna work for me on my 5 virtual machines. Well, it's probably overkill for your 5 virtual machines. If you have less than 50 or 60 on a single cluster of machines, you're probably going to spend too much to see a value in this. But if you're talking 60, 70 machines, now you're going to see that performance impact. That's where this comes into play. Security for containers, if you're doing anything in Kubernetes or Docker, we have the ability to protect that workload too. And the integrity monitoring. So it's not file integrity monitoring; it's system integrity monitoring. I know when I can correct if a registry key was changed, I can fix it. If the attributes of a file were changed, I could fix it. If a file of a certain type was dropped in a folder you didn't want those types of files dropped in, I could delete it. We could report on any of that too. So maybe it was something that you just wanted to let you know that these things were happening, so we can report instead of taking action. Security for mobile is our iOS, Android, and Chromebook solution. So it does not need to integrate with an MDM. It can, and it will give you additional capabilities. But it is a mobile threat detection and prevention. So you will protect the device. And if you're thinking, well, in my organizations, I got a lot of people that bring their own and they don't want anything on them. It's no big deal. I can scale back everything. I don't need to see where you're browsing. I don't need to see what you're doing. I only need the device type, the OS, and the version. I believe I'd have to double check just to protect the device, and you are attaching that mobile device to sensitive information in my environment, right? You're trying to get your email on it. You're trying to access work documents. At the very least, let us put mobile threat detection on there, prevention on there, so that you're not vulnerable to things just because it's your home to your own mobile device that you're trying to connect to work, right? So we want to protect everything at all times. So that's the portfolio right now. So like I said, 5 or 6 years ago, this was very different than what we're offering now. And as you can see, all of this, and that's why we call it Gravity Zone, all of this is going to be pulled in to that management console.
I like it.
We've come a long way, Steve.
You have, man. This is really cool. All right. So I'm sure I've got a million other questions, but I'm ready to dive into a demo if you are.
Absolutely. So what we're going to do real quick is just going to walk through. Let's say I'm bringing on a new customer. What were the steps that I would take to say, okay, let's stand up a customer, let's get something deployed. Oh, and by the way, we need to make sure that we're going all the way to MDR. So we'll walk through step by step all of those things. Ask questions along the way. I am very versatile. I can flip one way and come back the other real quick. So as we mentioned, this is Gravity Zone. This is the management console. This is where things are going to be. My lab has not been up to date. I've been very busy. So you see a little bit of information here, but not as much as I usually have in there. So we'll come back to that in the future. What goes on here now is I bring on a new company, right? A new customer. And now I have to say, okay, what do I want to do? Well, I need to put some information in here and walk through the process of saying, okay, now that I have the company, what modules of Bitdefender am I going to license? Now, this is very important. When you're working with Bitdefender, there's no license management for you or your customer, right? So your distributor or your RMM, wherever you're purchasing monthly licenses from Bitdefender for, owns the license, and they assign you a pool of seats that you can deploy, spread across your customers any which way you want, right? So you see here when I go to licensing, it basically just says this is how many seats you have available, right? So I have 4 used seats for this customer. When we get into setting these things up, we have some options for a la carte, and that lets you pick which solutions you want to add to your customer, from the advanced threat security, which is the HyperDetect and the Sandbox Analyzer, to the extended detection and response, which we have 4 centers for. One is identity providers, one is productivity apps, and we have bundles that we've introduced recently that when you choose the bundle, it's automatically included in that one. The network and the cloud workloads also, so those are different XDR centers that allow you to get more at the source control than just at the endpoints. And then everything is just a flick of the switch. When I want to turn something on, I just turn it on. The funny thing about our MDR, it's so easy to onboard. We built all of this technology, so we don't have to install anything. We don't have to update anything, uninstall, reinstall, restart. It's a flick of a toggle switch. So as long as I have the core product and at a minimum, the EDR on an endpoint, when I turn this Managed Detection Response Foundation's toggle switch on, that tells me that customer is now going to end up in the MDR dashboard, right? But again, we're gonna walk through how we get there. So I enable the modules, and now I have to go and deploy this to those endpoints, right? So in my package installation, anything that I want for that customer to be turned on, I need to just put a checkbox there. Again, no licenses that you need to manage, right? Very important. There's a couple things here. Go ahead.
Dumb question. So let's say I didn't turn on MDR or XDR. Are there things that we can deploy in the installation package that are not going to be used because we're not using those licenses?
So the installation package will only reflect. So from power user up, those are the included things, right? So from this power user up, all of those are always visible. If I
So it's
don't
only going to
turn something
show what's
on, you won't
it's only
see
going to
it.
show what's available. Got it.
Exactly. You won't see it. So if you're thinking, oh, I'm going to send EDR to this deploy EDR to this customer, and you're creating this package and you do not see EDR here, you have to go back to the customer and check that checkbox. Once that's done, you'll see it in the installation package. So we'll get to that to what else is required in a second. So EDR, that is a module that you deploy. XDR is things that you deploy. The advanced threat security, the hyper detect and the sandbox analyzer, those are policy controls. So you just need to make sure you update the policy. The MDR is a service, so you just need to make sure you tick that. So as long as you have EDR deployed, you have your policy set with the XDR, the ATS and EDR pieces. We'll show you, which we talked about a few minutes ago, but I'll show you in the policy. That will then send the telemetry once you tick the MDR. I want to talk about this for a second, right? MSPs don't always have the luxury of being able to reboot machines at will, right? Your customers have their production cycles that they have to work within. So we've built a way that says, all right, remove competitors, yes or no. If you choose to remove the competitor, a couple of things could happen, and we've seen this more often than not. It might be a password protected install, right? I can't pass a password to someone else's install to ask them to very politely remove themselves. We don't brute force uninstall anything. We will wait for a clean reboot to come back before we'll start our installation. If for any reason that application could not uninstall itself, we will not start our install. To combat that, we've given you the ability to install Bitdefender next to what's currently there. So no reboot. In addition, no lack of protection. Now, you might be thinking to myself, Paul, running two antivirus solutions is crazy. I can't do that. We do warn you right here that that's not recommended. So you should very quickly work on uninstalling what was currently there. Now, told you I've been in this industry since 2005. When you have two scanning engines fighting for the same resources, you have a higher probability of seeing system instability. If it's machine learning and artificial intelligence only, and there's no signature database and there's no local scanning engine, you have a much lower possibility of there being any type of system resource problems. So depending on what you have deployed, this is perfectly safe. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Good.
Yeah.
All right. So we set our package up, and now we gotta go and deploy it. We have a bunch of different ways that you can do that. Anything that's a downloader, it's a stub installer. It's going to download a 5 meg file. It's going to go and call the rest of the installation, and it's going to pull it down and start the installation. Anything that says kit, that is a full installation, and it's usually around 500 to 600 meg, and there's a good reason for that. Bitdefender does not require you to uninstall and reinstall when you want to add new product modules. We do a reconfigure, because that package that is that large has everything contained to it, so you don't have to worry about uninstalling and reinstalling. The restart with those checkboxes that say now add patch management, now add the EDR sensor, we will stop and restart our service. When it comes back, it will have the new modules that you've added, right? So you can pull this kit down, the downloader down. You can script it into whatever. You can turn it into an MSI to deploy it those ways. Or I have a handful of MSPs that use an RMM, and they just copy this downloader link into their scripting, and it goes and it gets the install on the endpoint, and it installs it on the endpoint. Very important not to rename this, because this link contains everything that you're going to need. What company does it belong to? Which folder does it belong in? What modules are on it, right? So if you're going to do that, don't rename that, because it's very important to how this deploys and where it lands, right? So now that you've deployed it, we have to start talking about how Bitdefender is going to manage the Bitdefender endpoint security tools on the endpoint. So some things you can create global policy for and then pull into a single policy. So if I wanted to create a list of global exclusions, if I wanted to create my maintenance window for patching, or if I wanted to create a web scheduler that says, these categories are going to be blocked during lunch, during production times, but we can open them up during lunch, I would create those things in advance. When I go into my master policy, we also have this concept of inheritance rule. So we understand that you're going to want to use these policies over and over again. So we don't make you create a new one every time you want to do something. I can say, I've got a bunch of healthcare, a bunch of dental practices. They all use the same software, and they all recommend excluding it from scanning. So I can take the anti-malware settings from another policy that I created those exceptions in, and now those exceptions will be pulled in. Make sense?
That's awesome.
There's another thing here. Allow users to change this policy. So recently, we've had a lot of MSPs coming back to us with best practice calls. So we've been using Bitdefender for a while. We have a lot of customers and a lot of policies. We want to try and condense those, right? So they ask, so what do we do for being able to use this over and over again? I would suggest creating a service account, right? That service account would log into Gravity Zone and remove this allow other users to change my master policies checkbox. That way, the only time you can make a change to the master policy is with the account that created it. Any other policies, so if you had sub policies or whatever, if you wanted other people to make changes to certain parts of that policy, I could turn this checkbox on. But as long as I'm inheriting this from someplace else, let's just say here, rules, and click add. So I can change any other part of this firewall, this policy, but I can't change the firewall policy. Oh, I didn't click save. Never mind. It won't allow me to change what's inherited from someplace else, but I can change other things in the policy. Right. So we're really trying to help you condense things down to manage them better. Then you can create one-offs because you can clone these policies. And when you clone them, any of the inheritance policies, any of the rules, anything that you brought into it goes with it. You just rename it for the one-offs, right? So now let's talk about what's going on here under the hood. So in the on access, we do have a 20+ year database of signatures. Our heuristics, our machine learning, artificial intelligence, a local sandboxer called Behave that detonates things that could contain malicious programs inside of them to make sure that they're not going to do anything, right? So this is us saying, all right, I can identify something probably 90+% just because I've got signatures for 20+ years. Machine learning, artificial intelligence, sandbox analyzer, you guys come alongside just in case I missed something, right? There's a ransomware vaccine here for legacy operating systems where it's exactly what it sounds like. Hey, don't look, we've got some ransomware on here already. Ha ha ha. Why? Ransomware writers aren't going to uninstall someone else's ransomware. They're going to go looking for a machine that's not infected, right? Now, on execute changes what we're looking at now. So on access, gave it 2 thumbs up. Advanced threat controls is zero trust process monitor. This is built in, no extra cost. It's monitoring running processes to make sure they're not going rogue. When it is, you have an option of disinfect, block, or take no action. I would never suggest take no action because this can stop ransomware dead in its tracks. When you have the advanced threat control, that is that hyper detect, fileless attack protection, and the sandbox analyzer, you get fileless attack protection. So now we can look at things that are running in memory. They're living off the land. There's nothing on the disk. But there's tactics that say there's some malicious behavior here. We can shut that down earlier in the attack kill chain based on being able to scan the command line scanner and all, and report what the anti-malware interface is saying, to say, okay, just because you're running PowerShell doesn't mean I should just trust PowerShell implicitly. Let's make sure what PowerShell is doing is behaving, right? There's a ransomware mitigation here where we built our own way of backing up files because VSS and shadow copies and all that stuff are targets for ransomware. So we tamper-proof it too, so you can't stop us from doing it. Any attempt to do so, we know that's not what encryption should be doing. So we will stop it, and we will give you the ability to roll those files back over here in the where is the ransomware activity section, right? There's a recovery mode. On demand is safest because you don't want to pull anybody out of compliance accidentally by sending something to, by rolling something back before an investigation happened, right? Automatically is for those people who don't have those compliance or cybersecurity regulations, and you can just automatically roll them back, and we will, right? So that's all part of core product with one exception: fileless attack protection. Anti-tampering. Someone's trying to disable some drivers, right? Trying to get to a point where they can stop Bitdefender. We're going to stop you from being able to do that. We know those things are present when people are trying to disable your defenses, so we protect you against that as well. With the hyper detect, this is that tunable machine learning. I don't have any idea what your environment looks like yet. So I'm going to give you my machine learning, and I'm going to say, okay, you can fine tune it any way you want, right? So I want to get aggressive on targeted attacks and ransomware. This is where we'll start giving you white and block list options based on the detections we're making. A lot of you guys use RMMs, and ladies use RMMs. There's tools that run in the background. They use scripts to call out to GitHub, pull things down, kick off other processes. We don't want to start production for false positives, so we'll show you what we're seeing. And you can say that's expected behavior and whitelist it right from the incidents dashboard over here on the top left, right? So this is tuning our machine learning to your environments to make sure that we're not getting in the way of production.
One thing that I'm noticing with a lot of these new cybersecurity platforms that have just kind of appeared overnight, it feels like your platform, and the best way I can describe this, your platform feels like traditional antivirus in that there's a million little settings that uh, as the IT administrator, I can change. Whereas
Yes.
the other cybersecurity tools, it's like you deploy it and they swear up and down that it works and it catches everything and and I don't mean to throw shade at any of these platforms,
No,
so I'm not going to name names,
no.
but it's confusing when I see these other ones that claim to be awesome cybersecurity platforms, and they may even be what I'll call all-in-one cybersecurity platforms.
Yeah.
So, they're taking this modern approach to we're going to do EDR and spam filtering, and so the list goes on, right? All the things that you can do with Gravity Zone.
Yeah.
Um,
But
so
you're making an excellent point.
yeah, am I
Bitdefender wasn't born yesterday, right? Bitdefender
right?
wasn't born yesterday. We founded in 2001. We were an organization before then that was already. So our founder loves to tell the story. We were building other things for other people at one point in our history, and we wanted to protect our own intellectual property. That's how Bitdefender was born, right? So this was back in 2001 when we got founded, and from the very early days of Bitdefender, artificial intelligence and machine learning was something that we were founded by a mathematician and scientist, right? This is stuff that comes natural to all those people that have founded Bitdefender. 2008, we actually started patenting that technology, right? So to that point, we were just calling it machine learning and artificial intelligence. 2012, 13, 14, next gen was born, right? Ask yourself, why would they call it next gen? Do you have a 20
Great
plus year
question.
database of do you have a 20 plus year database of signatures you can rely on? If they did, they would be selling you signatures.
Hmm.
Now, every single one of them is really good at what it does individually, right? That's what is important to understand. But that's a lot of dashboards. That's a lot of resource consumption. That's a lot of different budgets that you have to go to create what Bitdefender gives you in one console and one agent, right? And the learning curve that comes along with learning all those things and the multi-factor authentication to get into every single one of them, it's kind of daunting to understand what we were able to accomplish in a single agent, single console compared to the other vendors out there who say, here's a piece of it, or here's a piece of it, or here's a piece of it. Oh yeah, by the way, you still need something to start with protection. All these other pieces are the uh-oh buttons. Uh-oh, something happened. Now what? Uh-oh, something happened. Now what? Bitdefender is purpose-built to prevent bad things from happening and then give you the ability to triage those things when they do. So we're going to fast forward because we're getting a little long in time here. This is the incidents dashboard, right? This is when we are using EDR, when we are using XDR, this is where you come to triage those things. This is the one that got me in trouble with our SOC recently, actually on June 11th. I went and I said, I need some data in my dashboard to show people how Bitdefender works. And I went and I dumped LSAS credentials.
Don't do that.
No, so I have I had this going on, and where is it? We do all this stuff critical, right? So my lab has, to this point, my lab was not interconnected with our SOC because I was kind of doing MDR demos, but I was only getting started. From this point forward, I was integrated with the SOC, and when I did this, everybody got really mad at me because there was not flagged, this is Paul's demo lab yet. So I had phone calls coming in. I can attest to how quickly Bitdefender SOC responds. Humans respond. I was getting Teams messages. I was getting phone calls. I was getting emails because one of the people that I work with over there recognized the P Lupo is Paul Lupo, and it's P Lupo MDR test lab. So she's reaching out to me going, what are you doing? Oops. So anyways, they had to go in and they had to look at something, and I apologize profusely for setting the alarms off. But you see here, no threat, no threat, no threat, because after that, they realized it was something that I was doing. But when you look at that from Gravity Zone, what that looks like is we're gonna show you what was going on. We're going to show you all the processes, the files, etc. that was going on. We're also going to show you recommendations. What should you do next, right? So it's not just we detected something. I told you there's actionable intelligence in here. When I look at the actual event itself, I view it in the graph, I get some more information, right? So if I don't know exactly what this is, I can send it to the sandbox. We're going to send you a forensic analysis back. I can check virus total from here. What is this? Was this something I need to worry about? Who is saying that this is bad? Well, nobody's saying it's bad because, you know, it's not exactly itself bad. It's just suspicious, right? I can add that exception from here. I can read more about what was going on and see all the different MITRE attack techniques. And Bitdefender scored very high in all of the MITRE attack techniques recently. Including not just the prevention that sits on the endpoints, but the humans responding to the incidents in our SOC. Stephen, that might be some information that I might pass over your way to, because it is public, to disseminate it in your crowd. But first and foremost, I got to contain this. I don't know what's going on, so I can isolate this right from here. Once I isolate it, I can then remote into it. I can connect to it using PowerShell. Bitdefender will give you a list of commands: restore registries, kill processes, to clean this machine up to get back on to the network, right? So that starts with the isolation. Now, once I'm done with the isolation, I can take it out of isolation with the, basically in reverse. You'll see here there's an install patch option. If you're using our patch management, and this was a vulnerability because something was left unpatched, you can actually patch it right from here too. Actionable intelligence. When we need to do further investigations, you can click on this collect investigation package. We're going to get all the data that Bitdefender support and engineering teams need to research what that was if it was unknown to us. And one thing that's really important to understand, we're not going to make you look for the trigger. This is always the trigger. We'll put you right on it. This is what caused the incident to trigger. We're not going to make you sift through it to see what was going on. I can kill processes from here, like I said, and you'll see all these different things, all key logging, win log on, etc. I can view that sandbox analyzer report right from here. Right? So it's going to give me some information, some forensics about what that was. And I'll come back to that. Well, there we go. Well, task manager.exe wasn't exactly a threat, but what was going on? Well, registries were modified. There was masquerading, etc. Were there any system changes? Were there any registry key changes, etc.? We'll show you all that. We're going to show you the files that were involved and were those files dangerous? Geodata. Where in the world did this come from? How did this get into my environment? Network details. Any host names or IP addresses that were called out to, we're going to show you. The timeline, the graph, right? So I want to click on this and see what happened. I have another report that this goes crazy on, but it shows you what would have happened if it didn't go to our cloud to get analyzed. This would have happened in your environment. Any indicators of compromise, we're going to list as well. Any screenshots that we can pull out. So when this is a ransomware note, we actually show you the ransomware note. That's pretty cool. We have 36 decryptors that we give away on our website. Let's say this machine that this originated on didn't have Bitdefender on it. Got to a Bitdefender machine, we were able to get the ransomware note. You could probably match it up with one of the decryptors that we have for free on our website and get the data back on that machine that didn't have Bitdefender on it. The next step would be put Bitdefender on that machine. So anyways, a lot of this stuff is again, time consuming for you as the user. I got to come in here. I got to take my notes, what was going on. I got to assign it as criticality. I can assign it to a different user if I'm not the user that was assigned to this endpoint, but I was in the dashboard and saw it. And then I have to mark the status, right? And then I have to do that for all of my customers. This is a very small test lab, which is where we get into, okay, well, who's going to do that on my behalf? That's where the SOC comes in, the MDR, the Managed Security Response. So I can see all my companies in one, or I can start going into one company and getting the information about what was going on there. Also, onboarding issues, right? So when you onboard, you want to make sure that all your things are monitored by the SOC. If there's licensing issues, if your policy isn't set up correctly, we're going to identify that right here. So you will know, I just need to make a change here or make sure my licensing is up to date. The first thing that you do when you onboard is you create emergency contacts. So our team knows who to respond to, who to call when we take an action. 20-minute SLA, 30-minute? 20 or 30-minute SLA. I know it's within a half an hour. We act immediately, and then we respond within that amount of time. Pre-approved actions, right? You want us to just do stuff without having to contact you because it might be 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. All of these actions that you're telling us to do, including quarantining files or forcing user credentials, our SOC team will do on your behalf. You'll see here, I left a note though. Do not isolate servers without contacting me first. That could be production. And we don't want to take anything out of production for a false positive, right? So you set those things up and we say, okay, here's the contacts, here's the approved actions. Now that telemetry goes in and our team knows what to do when they detect something, right? So we'll see incidents, triage events, hunts. Hunts are very important to understand, right? So we're not sitting around waiting for something to happen to take an action, right? If we see something in someone else's environment or saw something in the wild, periodically, we take a look at your environments to make sure that there's not something lurking there that was going to someday just explode, right? Response actions. When we do something, we're going to list all the things that we did, right? So here's what the analyst did, etc. Also, if you didn't pre-approve us to do something, or if something wasn't critical, it was low criticality, whatever, we're going to drop a recommendation. And you can set up email alerts that when there's a recommendation, whether there's an investigation, or any of those things, they can be automatically sent to you so you know it's time to look in the dashboard. I did a net scan, right? I wanted to see what other IP addresses were on the network. The SOC said, that looks suspicious, but it was normal behavior. So rather than block it or take an action, they left a recommendation that I should check that machine, make sure that is a valid network scan. If it's not, get it off the network, start doing some scanning and put Bitdefender on it if it isn't already, right? But because I know it was authorized, I can just come in here and go, all right, I know what that is, no worries. We're going to give you tickets, right? So any of the tickets that you're working with are going to be listed here. And you can interact with, so live incidents get a security account manager on the phone calling you. Tickets that are ongoing, you can interact with the ticketing system here for getting the updates on them and whatnot. A bunch of reports too, right? So I'm going to get a monthly report that shows what happened to my entire customer base over the past month, right? And this is one of the things that really sets us apart from our competitors. We hear a lot that the reporting capabilities so that they can go back to their customers with intelligent information is a little bit lacking. So we've really outshined people in giving you information about what's going on, right? So human analysis, what did humans look at? Automated analysis, how many incidents, right? Of deployment summaries, all those things are part of what we're doing. Any investigations, the customer that we were investigating, what type of investigation it was. That's the top level report. If I want to go down into an individual customer, I can also go down into the individual customer. This prepares me for a conversation with that customer that says, well, we saw an incident, Bitdefender got in and they took care of it. And we're arming you with all kinds of intelligence to be the subject matter expert for your customers. In addition to that, and let me see right here, depending on your industry, because we're gonna have a questionnaire that you're gonna fill out. What is your industry? If you're in the education sector, if you're running whatever, we give you tipper reports, we give you social engineering reports, right? So giving you all this data to be the security subject matter expert for your customers, right? This is a end-to-end solution. It's not just we're going to take some actions and leave you hanging. Anything that happened during that time, any information you need that's relevant, we're going to hand it to you, because it's not enough to just block things and not tell you why and not give you an explanation of what it was, right? We're very thorough, and we have really, really good response to the service that we layered on top of everything else that we do.
So I know a lot of MSPs are starting to jump over to that Microsoft Defender bandwagon. And there are some cybersecurity platforms that will like manage Defender. Is that anything that you guys are getting into? Does Bitdefender play nicely with Defender?
So our solutions are designed to work with our own solutions, right? We're not ingesting third party. And why that's important is we trust what we see. We don't have to interpret what something else would be sending to us, right? It's every piece of it along the way, Bitdefender touched before it got to the EDR, before it got to the SOC. So we've already vetted it. We've already said whether it was good or bad. We don't have to investigate that any further, right? When you start ingesting someone else's information, you have to make sure that they know what they're talking about before it gets to you. Otherwise, where do you go from there, right?
Are you implying that Microsoft may not know what they're talking about?
I would never say that.
Fair enough.
I will say everybody, like I said in the beginning, everybody's good at what they do, but none of them do what we do. They have a piece of what we do.
Yeah. What about like Microsoft 365? Do you guys integrate with that for um, maybe for directory of users or anything?
So the Microsoft Office 365 integrations that we do are for the XDR sensors, right? So when I want to set up a sensor, I'm going to add a new sensor, and I'm going to say I want to add it to this customer, and what is that sensor? So we have a bunch of things here. Office 365. This is the one that allows me to go in and delete those emails that are going rogue. Azure Active Directory, etc., allow me to reset user credentials, right? But we don't stop there. We also have integration with AWS, with Google Cloud, with Azure for processes and changes to make sure that the user that's doing is approved. So that type of XDR is also there, right? So the network sensor is looking at traffic, east, west, north, south, and looking at everything that's going on there and saying, okay, so is that normal? And should I be alerting someone? And then you can follow the chain that says, well, it went from here to there, to there, to there. And okay, we stopped it here because we realized that was malicious. Google Workspace Security for Mobile is our own mobile threat detection that allows us to put it into the XDR as well, right? And then we also have our CSPM. And I don't know how many MSPs are doing cloud security performance management, but we're able to identify, compliance across your cloud instances. Your Azure Active Directory. Why is there 75 super admins? Things like that. As well as give you reports with some guidance on where you should go with those reports. So we see that this is configured incorrectly. So here are some steps to fix it. Right. Some of the stuff will even spit out JSON. So all you got to do is copy and paste to where your remediation would be done, and be able to do it that way. But for other integrations into Azure Active Directory, we're not doing that type of stuff where we know about your users, unless you're integrating for the XDR sensor. So, for example, I can't say bring in all my Azure Active Directory accounts here for my users. I have to create the users by hand. It makes sense. So, depending on what you're asking, I have two answers.
No, that makes perfect sense. And one thing I want to throw out there, um, so the big CrowdStrike incident that happened a week ago, more than a week ago now. Oh, how time flies when you're having fun. Um, so that incident happened because CrowdStrike. There was a number of reasons that happened, but bottom line, CrowdStrike has like a kernel driver that they wrote, or a driver that they wrote that touches the Windows kernel. So because of that, they were able to blue screen all of these machines, right? So most antivirus platforms these days, or cybersecurity platforms, I should say, my apologies, have a kernel driver, though, right?
Yep.
Okay.
This one was pointed back to the organization as a whole to respond to. We have I don't have the article right in front of me, but we put out an article in the way that we actually produce, test, and QA and release updates. And the reason I'm on this update, and I can get you that link, and you can send it out to your team after. The update ring here is very important, right? So how does Bitdefender test new stuff, and how does Bitdefender release things that are ready for the market? So if you are looking to test stuff, and you gotta sign a disclaimer here, a waiver, whatever. Our fast ring, if you're in our policies, that's where we put experimental stuff, right? So beta testers, they usually connect to the fast ring. Slow ring
So
is stuff that is,
MSPs like to put all their clients in the fast ring, right?
yeah. Hey, let's see what's new. The slow ring is for anything that is production ready, right? So we do have a lot of fail safes in place to make sure that Bitdefender releases are stable when they leave. That's as much as I can say about the how we release our updates.
And something I want to say is that um, with that type of issue, it's really easy to say, you know what, maybe security software doesn't need to have access to the kernel. But I think the problem you're going to experience when taking away kernel access, you're going to miss some security event processing flow information that Windows can provide from the kernel. You'll have significantly worse security, you'll have worse system performance, and you'll even potentially have other people getting all in a tussy because of Microsoft antitrust. If Microsoft Defender is the only thing able to access the kernel. So I just want you guys to keep in mind that, like, look, I get what happened a week or two ago kind of sucked. Okay. But I'm saying all of this because I don't want you to look at Bitdefender and all these other cybersecurity platforms and say, "Oh, well, you have kernel access, and this, that's just not acceptable."
Right.
Because I think kernel access is kind of a requirement
Yeah.
based on how Windows is built.
Well,
So
think
get
about
that
this.
thought out of your mind.
Well, think about this. Anything we remove opens a hole for someone to exploit, right? So the minute nobody's doing that, everybody's going after that, right? Okay, that's my way
Mhm.
in. And then you'll have reactions of things going back and forth. Now, what's really important to understand, and when you're considering which solutions you should be using, you have to look at the age of the organization first, right? Not just the organization itself, but how long have they been a security vendor? A week, 2 weeks, a month, a year, 2 years? And where, how did they get to the point where they decided it was time to have security in their portfolio? Bitdefender was born for security. It's always been security. It's only ever going to be security.
That's perfect. Yeah. Is there any, pricing? That's kind of the high note we can end on, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take a look back at my slides for a second,
Sure.
and let's start with this slide, right? So your Bitdefender, we don't take any direct orders. Everything goes through distribution or through an RMM, right? So if you're using ConnectWise or Kaseya or Ninja or any of those, they give you your pricing. If you're going through Ingram, if you're going through Pax8, if you're going through TD Synnex, they give you your pricing, right? When you talk about how it's licensed, the core product, everything you get there is one line item, right? When you start saying, okay, well, now I need to add advanced threat security, that's another line item. I need to add endpoint detection response, that's another line item, all the way out to all of these. The exception being, and I don't know if I built it into this one or not. Let me just take this to the other screen for a second. We just recently released bundles, right? So some of your providers will have the bundles, and from here, right? So in a la carte, you need to have core product plus ATS plus EDR to get to EDR. In the bundles, it's part of something called secure. So it takes 3 line items down to 1 line item. When you want to add in the managed detection response, that in a la carte is 4 line items. In the bundles, we reduced it to 1 line item. Now, I mentioned earlier when you can get some of the XDR sensors in one of the bundles. So extra brings you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 line items in 1 line item. Now it's called extra,
That's
and that gives
nice.
you the simplify, Steve, right? Simplify. The extended response, the EDR pieces are identity and productivity. Now, if you follow along this next line here, we're still going to give you all those other add-ons. So those will be individual line items. But what we're seeing in the industry right here with the managed service providers, when to get to MDR, it's no longer a 4 line item piece. It's 1 line item, depending on where you're purchasing it from. And the more you drive demand for these things, the easier it is for us to get them to you. So depending where you're purchasing from, if they're not, you can request from them that they also offer you these things. Otherwise, you're back to this guy with the multiple line items. So this is your option. Core is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then all those. So I would much rather have this myself.
Yeah.
But if it's not available, that doesn't mean you can't buy Bitdefender, right? So you still have that ability.
And what is pricing like?
Well, you've stumbled across the one thing that I actually have no input into and no idea what it's like. But I will say this: when we were talking with all of the different providers out there, distributors and RMs out there, it's very similar to what you can get other solutions for when you start consider, well, what is Bitdefender Core, right? And what is that compared to what I have? And now if I see, now I got to add a DNS product, now I got to add a full disk encryption product, now I got to add something else, we tend to be lower once you start putting together all of those pieces that you need.
One last question. Getting Bitdefender through the RMM. So I know you can get it from Enable and ConnectWise and like all sorts of companies are reselling Bitdefender. I remember a long time ago, um, back when it was Solar Dog Hound GFI Max. I, I
You're
don't
gonna get me
I
in
don't
trouble,
know
Steve.
I don't know what that product is anymore. I think it's Enable something. I
It
think it
is.
still exists.
It does.
Um,
Yep.
so that product they sold and they called it antivirus. It was very generic.
Yep.
It was
Yep.
like a bastardized version of Bitdefender. Can you shed some light on that? Is it actually like a stripped down version, or is it going to have all the features?
Steve, you got me in trouble with this one 6 years ago.
Uh-oh.
I'm still here though.
That's good.
All right. So let me explain. Let me explain the difference. SDK, software development kit. You license
Mhm.
technologies from us. You don't. We don't strip it down. They don't strip it down. They license from us exactly what they want to use in their product, right? So when you look at some of the RMMs out there who built us into their platform, it's whatever they license from us. And typically back then when those were built, we had much fewer options, right?
Mhm.
So core product is usually what they got, right? So whether or not they added full disk encryption later or they added patch management later, most of them won't because they have their own patch management. Um, you know, they would pick from this list at that time. And that's not to just point out Enable. It's anybody who built a Bitdefender OEM partnership where they built our stuff into them. These things were not available back then. And why is that important? Because the security stack itself has expanded. The
Mhm.
security needs out there, security, cybersecurity requirements out there have expanded. This is contract negotiations now, right? So what do you want to add? Okay, here, you can now license that. Now you have a development cycle. Now you have to build it. Now you have to test it. Now you have to push it out. So some of them do SDK. A lot of them have moved to API integrations. And the reason they move to API integrations is because it's easier to keep up with Bitdefender when it's an API integration that says, okay, now you have access to Gravity Zone, which you can purchase through my platform, which you can create accounts and customers and get additional modules through my platform. But it all synchronizes with Gravity Zone. And for triaging alerts and some stuff, creating policies, you go into Gravity Zone. But the heavy lifting is done inside the RMM, right? Um,
Mhm.
when you're an API integration versus a software development kit, it's a contract negotiation that says, I'd like to add one of these add-ons, no matter which one it is. And then it's a checkbox on our end to give you the entitlement to sell that to your customers. There's no more coding. There's no more development cycles. There's no more going out, putting it in there and see how it works. It's a checkbox to turn it on, and then you can sell it to your customers. And then you can either build your API so that they can get that technology through your platform, or you can just send them back to Gravity Zone and they can just turn it on by themselves. So there's different ways of thinking about how Bitdefender is integrated with other solutions. The old way was a software development kit. The new way is an API integration. Make
Got
sense?
it. It does, yeah. So, and
I'm going to
that's
get a
and
lot of
that's not
slack
to
for this
say
again, Steve.
no, and that's not to say that one vendor is doing it wrong per se.
It's different.
You have multiple options
Mhm.
for that very reason. Some people want the SDK capabilities, other people want the API capabilities,
Right.
and it sounds like you're supporting both for now.
Well, consider we have 170 SDK partners, and that I can tell you publicly. I can't tell you who they are because under contract we can't. I'm glad you
Mhm.
brought that up as well because we're not a marketing firm. We're a technology firm. We're a cybersecurity threat intelligence organization. 170-ish other vendors license our technology. Little known facts about Bitdefender: half or more of our employees are engineers and researchers and developers. With those 170 plus our own technology, nobody's got a larger footprint in security than Bitdefender. We've got over 600 million endpoints feeding telemetry back to our threat intelligence. And why is that important? When you start talking about machine learning and artificial intelligence and understanding what is out in the wild, you're only as good as the sample you feed to it.
Mhm.
And nobody's sample size is as large as Bitdefender's. End of story.
Love it. Well, Paul,
Well,
thank you
we're good at
so
what we
much
do.
for what was that?
It's why we're really good at what we do.
Yeah, you are good at what you do. Guys, if you want to learn more about Bitdefender, go to channelprogram.com, type in Bitdefender. Not only will you see all the different products that they've got listed on our platform, you'll be able to see reviews that MSPs have left for Bitdefender and get honest feedback, the good, the bad, the ugly. But let's be honest, it's mostly good. And you'll be able to make a well-educated decision on if this is a good platform for you. I'm sure if you go to Bitdefender's website, you can get signed up for the MSP Partner Program, which is absolutely free to join.
Yep.
And I believe, do you have NFR licenses?
So we do have, but once you go, it's pan.bitdefender.com to sign up for being a partner. It's our partner advantage network. And through there, you can get yourself some NFR licensing, some technical training, some sales training, marketing collateral, anything that you would need to get started with Bitdefender. Our LMS can be linked from there. So all the technical trainings. I do MSP focused onboarding masterclasses. I have other colleagues that do technology, troubleshooting, ask me anything, roadmap master's classes as well. So you can get access to all the master's classes that are out there, including ones that are upcoming, which I think we're going to start again in September. And I have to create some new content for some of them. As well as if you just go to our website and say, I'd like to start a trial, right? The trial gives you 45 days of all of our technology up to EDR, right? The XDR and the MDR cost money, so it's harder for us to say, here, try these. But we have ways that if you want to try them, we have in-product trials. So once you get Bitdefender up and running, you can turn on an MDR in-product trial. You can turn on an EDR in-product trial, right? So those entitlements would be enabled on your customer, so you can test it as a customer and not have to incur cost for seeing those things. So there's a lot of things going on at Bitdefender. Just wanted to remind everybody that our MDR SOC solution was launched right before COVID, right? So it's not a new solution. It's one that we're talking more about because the market is running us in that direction as well. So human-led, 365 by 7. One in US, one in EMEA, one in Singapore, so we can make sure that we have round-the-clock coverage for anything that's going on. Everybody in that SOC is a military-trained cybersecurity specialist, and nobody has less than a SANS certificate, right? So we won't hire anybody in our SOC that doesn't have a minimum of SANS certifications. These guys are smart, man.
Very good.
I don't even feel like I'm doing them justice. I think they're so much better than that, and it's a privilege for me to be able to work with them.
Well, good, man. Well, Paul, thank you so much for hopping on here and having this demo with us. I really appreciate it. I'm sure the MSPs do as well. MSPs, thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you at the next episode.